Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, my name's Alexaraye and welcome to another video. I'm so glad you're here and I'm so glad you clicked on today's video. This has been very long awaited on my channel. I have gotten so many requests to sit down and talk to you guys about the Shatter Me series, so that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm finally going to be sharing my full review on the entire series, as well as going book by book, kind of explaining what the series is about, talking about the order of the books. That's another really big question I get. What order are you supposed to read the Shatter Me series in? Because I know it does get a little bit confusing, especially with the novellas. So we're going to dive into that and talk about the order of the books. We're going to talk about the author of the books. We're going to talk about if you should read the books, if they're books that you would enjoy. And then at the very end, I'm going to share my personal opinion on the books. I'm going to share my ratings with you guys. It's a really cool series and we're going to talk all about it today. But here is the complete book series. I have all the paperback. These are like the most recent publication of them. I know there's other covers out where the font is a little bit thinner. There's a total of 6 books in this series along with 5 novellas. I know what a lot of you are thinking. That's a big book series, but I have to say they're pretty short books and you kind of fly through them because the writing style in them is very easygoing. It really didn't take me that long to get through this series. They're very fast-paced, easygoing reads. They're easy to keep up with. So although there is a lot of books in the series and it looks a little intimidating, it's not really that intimidating. It's super easygoing. It's easy to get through. This is a dystopian based series by tahereh mafi. She also just came out with another book series I haven't read yet. I hear incredible things though, and I really want to pick that up soon. You guys have read her newest series. Let me know down below what you think about it. I'm very intrigued, especially after finishing the Shatter Me series, to see like what this new series is all about. So these are by tahereh mafi, and the entire series revolves in a dystopian world, and I always get questions about this and I always get comments on my videos whenever I talk about the Shatter Me series. It is considered dystopian and not fantasy, but I do feel like there are little aspects in this series that kind of make it like semi-fantasy. There is like this magical sense in it because there's powers. I feel like that's kind of fantasy, but like at the same time I understand people who say it's not fantasy, it's dystopian. For the sake of this video, this is a dystopian book series. It revolves around a teenage girl named Juliet, and she has never been able to actually experience physical touch. She can't touch other people because her touch is actually deadly, and if she touches someone, it causes them extreme harm and can ultimately kill them. So that's what the series begins with, and eventually she is outcasted from society because everyone is scared of her and they think she is this terrible monster. She's sent to an asylum to basically live out the rest of her life. Mind you, she's only a teenager, so she's very, very young when her parents kind of hand her in. So from that point, we kind of watch Juliet struggle with being in an asylum and being stuck with her thoughts and feeling as if she is a monster because that's what society has made her out to be. Eventually though, the reestablishment takes her out of the asylum in hopes of using her as a weapon because they look at her and see that because she can use her touch to harm other people, she's like the ultimate weapon. So the reestablishment eventually pulls her out of the asylum in hopes of training her to become the ultimate weapon in their army. So that is what book 1 mainly covers. We are just kind of watching Juliet go from the normal world to the asylum to the reestablishment. So that being said, we have the reestablishment in the Shatter Me series. They are like the hierarchy, I guess you could say. They basically control everything in the world. Their main goal, I guess you could say, is they want to create a better world, but they're not really creating a better world. They're actually making the world worse. They don't really care about the civilians that are under them. Before Juliet was tossed in the asylum, she's living with her family in these things called sectors, and that's kind of how like places and people were divided. They're basically living in these really worn down homes. They don't have a lot of food. Their jobs are not paying them well. The reestablishment is not making the world really a better place. They're doing the complete opposite. So throughout the series, the reestablishment is definitely like the bad guys, I guess you could say. There is another group of people aside from the reestablishment and then the normal civilians that you do meet later on in the series. You get more familiar with them in book 2, but mainly in book 1 it kind kind of revolves around Juliet going from home to asylum to the reestablishment, where she's still kind of a prisoner but being used as a weapon. Now the hype around this series, that I think is why a lot of people started, is the love triangle we see in here between Juliet, Warner, and Adam. In book 1, Adam is basically sent to retrieve Juliet from the asylum and bring her in to the reestablishment. And then our third piece to this love triangle is Aaron Warner. He's actually the leader of Sector 43. He's actually on the bad side, which is absolutely crazy. Once she arrives at the headquarters, that's when she meets Warner, and they kind of start this back and forth with each other. It's definitely an enemies to lovers trope in there. I have to say, book 1 is a lot of world building and setting up the main story and the main characters, but it's incredible. I was obsessed with it the entire time. Like I said, I literally flew through this book so fast. This was a 5-star read for me. I had read nothing like this before getting into this series, and I was just so impressed. I was blown away with it. Immediately after Shatter Me, we jump in to the first novella in the series, which is Destroy Me. This book is called Unite Me, and it contains both the novellas Destroy Me and Fracture Me. Novella 1 is Destroy Me. It's considered book 1.5. Destroy Me was the same story that we see in Shatter Me, but it was told from Warner's point of view. I get a lot of questions regarding if you have to read the novellas. A lot of people say they're not necessary, and a lot of people haven't even read them. I personally feel like they're not necessary to the storyline. I do think it's a cool addition to the story, and if you can read the novellas, I would recommend reading them, just because it's really cool to see the different point of views of characters. Seeing Warner's point of view in Destroy Me gave me a better understanding of who Warner is. In Shatter Me, it's told from Juliet's point of view, and at a lot of times, Warner, Adam, everyone else in the story, they come across so different from what they really could be because it's told from Juliet's point of view. So reading the story from Warner's point of view, I was like, oh, that's why he did this and he said that. And it just gives you a better explanation and a better understanding of his character. I really appreciated Destroy Me. I think I rated it 3 stars. I think it did an incredible job at showing us who Warner really was and what his intentions are when it comes to Juliet. Book 2 is Unravel Me. This one is a little bit bigger than book 1. Something to note with the Shatter Me series is the chapters are very, very short. They're only like a couple pages, so it does make the story seem a little bit more fast-paced. Reading this series, I never once got really confused or lost in it. I was able to keep up with the characters, places, what was going on, which I really appreciate, because I notice when I read fantasy books, dystopian books, there's a lot to usually process in those types of books, and there's a lot to remember, there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of world building. But in the Shatter Me series, Mafi made it so easy for readers. She also did it in a way that really just sucks you in, and you don't want to put the book down. In book 2, more characters are introduced. We watch Juliet go back and forth between what is right, what is wrong. I feel like in this book, it's a very big turning point in Juliet's story, because in book 1, we kind of watch her shy away from people and the life that she can be living, because she's always been told that she's a monster and she'll never be able to have real relationships with people. We see a lot of Juliet's insecurities come out in this one, whereas in book 2, I feel like we see a lot of growth and character development for her. We see her become a little bit stronger and more confident in herself. This was another 5-star read for me. I loved how much of the story changed. It was not what I expected going into it. I thought we were gonna go a totally different direction, honestly, especially after finishing book 1. I'm really happy with the way the story kind of turned in this book. And then following Unravel Me, we go into book 2.5, novella number 2, which is Fracture Me. Fracture Me is told from Adam's point of view, which I thought was really cool. Fracture Me ended up being a 2-star rating for me. In this novella, my entire mindset kind of changed when it came to the love triangle. Because it's told from Adam's point of view, you get a totally different perspective on who Adam is and what he really wants. So it definitely took me for a ride reading that novella. It was a roller coaster because I was totally shocked with Adam's point of view. That's why I think the novellas are super important, because if you don't read them, you may be a little bit confused in the books to come. Like if I didn't read Fracture Me and I went right into Ignite Me, I think I may have been really confused about where the division was coming between Juliet, Warner, and Adam. So I do think the novellas are important. I think they're essential, but it's all about personal preference. If you don't really care about the extra point of views from other characters, then you can skip it and save your time. Book 3 in this series is Ignite Me. This is most people's favorite book in the entire series. This is the book everyone everyone raves about. It's the book that everyone says you fall madly in love with Aaron Warner in. This was another 5-star read for me. I loved this so much. So many of my favorite book quotes came out of this. It's just such a big turning point in the entire series, and if you didn't know this was actually written to be the very last book in the Shatter Me series. It was only ever meant to be a 3-book series. This was written to be the final book. When I read it and I found that out, I thought it was really interesting because then I went on to read the other books in the series that were written, I believe, like 2-3 years after this final book came out. I was so in shock because I think the way this book wraps up is absolutely incredible, but you get a glimpse into what happens next. After everything seems to end on a perfect note, you get a glimpse into what the world is like after. So I have to say, I'm really happy that Tahereh Mafi came back a few years later and decided to add on to the series, because I feel like if she ended the Shatter Me series with Ignite Me, it would have been too easy of an ending. I feel like in the back of my mind, I would have always wondered like what happened next. This was absolutely incredible. Even if you just want to read up to book 3 and not continue on in the series, I highly recommend it because it's just such a fun and thrilling read where she really keeps you on your toes the entire time. You want to see what happens next. You want to see what happens to Juliet. This book cover is also just stunning. You can tell that this is gonna be like the best one. So after book 3, I decided to jump in to Restore Me, which is book 4 in the series. This is the aftermath of Ignite Me. It tells the story of what happens after the main storyline of Shatter Me, after the main plot of it. We see life after it, and I thought this was so cool and different, and I've really never read anything like this series before. This was, of course, another 5-star read. A lot of people actually say don't really like the books after book 3. They feel like they're not necessary. I personally really enjoyed them. It's the aftermath of what happens in the main storyline. I've said this in like all my Shatter Me reading vlogs, but this would be such a killer movie franchise if they made these books into films. I really feel like it'd take the world by storm. Something that's really cool about this book as well is that it actually turns into a dual point of view. Instead of getting a novella between Ignite Me and Restore Me, we're just given a dual point of view story in here, and I really love that. I won't tell you who the dual point of view is between because I feel like that kind of spoil it. Getting the dual perspectives in this book is really interesting, and I feel like you dive deeper into the characters in this one. You learn more about them, you learn more about their insecurities. In these books you get more of Warner and Adam. Instead of it just being Juliet's story, it now becomes Warner's story and Adam's story, and I have to say it's really cool to see their point of views because the story's totally different through their eyes. Then we jump into the Shadow Me novella. This is so cool because this is told from Kenji's point of view. Kenji is a character that we meet in the Shatter Me series, and him and Juliet quickly form this friendship with one another. They have each other's backs throughout the entire series. Kenji is like the ultimate best friend and best side character in this series. You're seeing the story from a different character's view, and it's just so different and crazy. I feel like in these novellas you really feel for Kenji because he seems totally fine and perfect in the books, but when you see it from his side, he's struggling a lot and trying to take care of himself while taking care of everyone else. Kenji's story is so good. I feel like it's so important to the main storyline. I wouldn't skip Kenji's. It just gives you that extra context from his point of view. I feel like it just helps make more sense of the story after Ignite Me. But Shadow Me was a 4-star rating. After Shadow Me, you jump into Defy Me, which is book 5 in the series. Defy Me ended up being a 4-star read because this is where biggest plot twist happens and literally left me shook. I did not see this plot twist coming in this book, and I think because it was such a crazy one, I had to rate it 4 stars because I was like, okay, I need time to process what I just read. I feel like in this book, the entire story really changes. We're kind of introduced to a bigger storyline, and it's crazy. Like, this is such a crazy one. It's very good, but it's crazy, and I just wasn't ready for it. So it ended up being 4 stars. I felt like I was overwhelmed with the amount of characters that were being introduced. And then after Defy Me, we jump back into the novellas and we read Reveal Me. Again, Kenji's point of view. Reveal Me was 4 stars and I really liked it. I think I liked Reveal Me more than Shadow Me because Kenji is introduced to another character in the series. After that one, we jump into Imagine Me. This is book 6. This is officially the final full book in the Shatter Me series. This cover I thought was absolutely stunning. I think to look at the progression of the covers throughout this series says so much. In book 1, we have the eye that's kind of crying and it shows that Juliet is super insecure and scared. And then in the final book, Imagine Me, we see her all armored up and ready to go. She's more confident. And I just really loved that we got to see like the progression of the covers. Imagine Me is the final book in the series. This was another crazy roller coaster. Wild plot twist that we are thrown. It's the final battle we're kind of seeing as everything wraps up finally. This I ended up rating 4 stars as well, just because again I feel like the storyline changed so much. I just wasn't expecting it. It caught me off guard, so I ended up rating this only 4 stars. I still think it was absolutely incredible. I think it's a great conclusion to the series. There was a certain part of this book that I remember not necessarily liking, and I found it to be like kind of weird and almost uncomfortable because it has to do with Warner's father. But right after it, we have Believe Me, which is the final novella and officially the wrap up, the conclusion of the Shatter Me series. This is so cute. This is such a cute and perfect conclusion to this crazy series. I feel like in Believe Me, we finally see everything that we've wanted to see. After this long series, we finally get the ending that I feel like most of us were kind of waiting for and hoping for, and I think it was a really good conclusion. I ended up rating this 4 stars. These are all the books. Again, I did really enjoy the Shatter Me series, especially the core 3 books. The first 3 books in the series are so good and you just want to keep reading to see what happens. You want to see what happens between Warner, Adam, Juliet. You want to see what happens with the reestablishment. It's such a fun and different book series. My only gripe with it is I feel like it gets very crazy towards the last part of the series. I think we're thrown a lot of plot twists and a lot of story changes that just really caught me off guard and I was a little overwhelmed. So that's like my only gripe with it, but at the same time I do think that it made the series more interesting and fun. I love the core 3 books and I do like the other books that come after, but I just think it's a lot sometimes and it could be overwhelming. I do recommend this series to literally everyone. I talk about it all the time to people because I think it's such a fun and different type of story that I've never really read anything like before. They're easygoing, they're fast-paced. I think Mafi writes in a super cool style. Makes you feel like you're immersed in that storyline. So yeah, I think it's an incredible book series. As for who should read this series, I believe these are considered young adult. Actually, they might be considered teen reads. I think these can pass for teen reads, to be completely honest. They're very fun, action-packed. There's a lot of adventure in here. There's a romance in here. It never gets to a point where it's too graphic. There's not really any spice in there. So I do think they're perfect for teen readers who are looking to get into dystopian books. But at the same time, I feel like they're also perfect for young adult readers. They're perfect for adult readers. It really just depends on what type of story you're looking for. If you're looking for a super fun, adventurous, dystopian world story, like you'll most likely love the Shatter Me series. Take it from me, I am a very heavy romance reader on my channel. I read a lot of YA romance. When I read the Shatter Me series and I ended up loving it and being obsessed with it, I was totally surprised. It's definitely a book series where you finish it and you get sad because you're not ready to leave that world or those characters. So I feel like if you end a book series and that's how you feel about it, that means you enjoyed it and that means it's a good one. But that is all for my Shatter Me review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you had fun. I hope this video was helpful because I get so many questions on the Shatter Me series. I get so many questions on what it's about, what the book order is, what my opinion is. So I hope I was able to answer all of your questions in this video. I hope that those of you who are on the fence about starting the series are off the fence now and want to start the series. If you have any other questions regarding the Shatter Me series, comment down below. I reply to all my comments. If it is a spoiler related comment, just put like a little spoiler warning. But yeah, I feel like I covered almost everything in today's video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Don't forget to leave all your questions down below and I'll see you in my next video.